I made the 4 or 5 grand in a weekend. At the time, I had never made any money like that in a weekend, and I was like, no way. Like this works. And I just dove headfirst in, and from March to the end of the year, I ended up making over 150,000 as a 21-year-old. So at the time, that was a lot of money to me.
Right.
And again, it was that undeniable proof of like, okay, this works. Like I went from completely broke to making the most money I ever had in the shortest time period, and just by following these principles.
All right, guys, welcome back. Today, my guest here is Adam Avinas. He's a manifestation coach out of Canada. My man has been in the business for some time now, and he is just all about helping people out. So, Adam, I guess if you'd like to kind of jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself, we'll just go from there.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, I actually came from a background of real estate. I came from sales as well. I was in the high ticket space for a while, and it was years of kind of dancing on the surface or dabbling with this work before I really dove in and started to, learn from other coaches in the space. And it became so apparent once I really dove in and took this work seriously and started to learn from some of the best in the world, like Bob Proctor and Dr. Joe Dispenza, that my results just exponentially increased. Like they took off. And it got to the point where I just couldn't ignore it anymore. And when I saw such insane results and people were constantly coming to me and saying, what are you doing? Like, how are you getting these results? How are you changing your life so dramatically? I had to step into it myself, and it's been such a fulfilling journey so far.
I love that, man. I love that. It's almost like when you're calling calls, it's nothing else you can do, right? So
Exactly. You can't ignore it.
can't ignore it. I love that, man. Okay, so I guess you were in real estate for some time. Kind of got your start in business there. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I guess were there any what accomplishments did you have early on that led you down the journey in real estate that led you to becoming a coach?
Yeah, I mean, so when I got into real estate, I think I was chasing external success, like other people's idea of success for a very long time. Um, and I had accomplished a lot and gotten a lot of accolades that I thought I wanted, but I got to this place where I had the money I thought I wanted and I had everything. I had this beautiful condo with the CN Tower view and all these things that I thought I wanted, and I was just not happy. I just did not get the fulfillment that I was looking for. And it made me really realize that, you can get whatever it is you want in the external world, but there's so much more to our happiness and to our fulfillment and to this life than just money, right?
Right, right.
So, I had learned this work through real estate. That's where I met my first coach. And I came to the point where I was so much more obsessed with my personal development work and from this side of it that than my real estate work. I would ignore my real estate work and just constantly focus on reading more books and doing more of the inner work. And it got to the point where, again, like I said, I couldn't ignore it. I had to move on. And I actually ended up leaving my real estate business behind and moving on to something that did make me more fulfilled. That was the high ticket space where I felt like I was making more of an impact before then moving into being a coach full time.
Wow. Okay, so kind of just left it at the door and then went for what you had to, man. I love that. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I call it my quarter life crisis. I was, I had the money, I had all the things I wanted. I just wasn't happy. I made a big change. I basically got sober. I moved out of the city. I left my real estate business to some people that I worked with and just started to change everything in my life.
Wow. So that's quite a just jump, man. That is quite the jump.
Yeah.
Um, what what road did you run into any roadblocks right after that, or what was that process like? Just jumping into the transition.
Yeah, the hardest thing of all of it was the anticipation of making the change.
Mm,
So it was hard to make a decision to leave real estate. It was hard to make a decision to leave the city. It was hard to fully commit and change my self-image to that of one who doesn't drink.
Mm.
But once I had committed, and a lot of people will learn this in their own journey, once you commit and you've made a decision and that decision is towards a life you're meant to live, everything just flowed so naturally and everything started to take off in ways that I could have never imagined. And I started to experience a different side of life that I didn't know existed.
Mm.
So once I actually made that decision, it actually wasn't too hard. The roadblocks kind of seemed to move to the side or not matter as much. Um, and this kind of speaks, this is something that you learn in the work that I teach, but when you have a definiteness of purpose, so when you really know what you want in life, all of the challenges along the way just kind of get pushed to the side, They don't matter as much, they're not as important because you know that what you're going after and what you want matters so much more than everything else. So that
Wow.
could be part of it.
I love that, man. I love that. Just having the crystal clear vision of knowing where you want to go.
Exactly.
That's powerful, man. That's powerful. You mentioned once or twice the getting sober, and I guess with alcohol, getting away from that was. Tell us a little bit more about that. Was the alcohol kind of holding you? Was it kind of like a form of sustenance? Is that like in that earlier time period where you were going through this, period of growth and understanding, trying to figure out who you really were? Was it something that kind of held you back? Is that why you got sober, or I mean, how
Yeah.
was?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It was holding me back for years. It was alcohol and weed, and
Gotcha.
I would hide behind them. I kind of, every single, even if I was, good and I only drank or smoked on weekends, I realized that I was either working or I was trying to escape my life.
Mm.
And I wasn't facing things from my past. I wasn't facing current emotions about how I felt about my life and everything. I would just kind of run away from them by using the alcohol and weed. So I got to a point where it became very clear that to live the life that I truly knew I was meant for, I had to make that sacrifice and leave them in the past.
Wow. And I'm sorry. What age were you when that happened?
When I quit alcohol and weed, I think, I had just turned 25.
25. So very very young age. I mean, right? I mean, it's a habit that stays in most people's life for their entire life, and it's only a wonder how much damage it causes to many people. But that's beside the point, right? What success early on did you have that really motivated you to keep going? I mean, other than the living in fulfillment, what were there certain periods of success that changed things for you?
Yeah, definitely. As I stepped more and more into my purpose, the results just got better and better. So, when I first got sober, I was toying with the idea that I wanted to be a coach. And a coach that I knew actually had been following my journey and was, loving seeing the change in my life. And she came and asked me to coach her.
Oh wow.
And it was, again, when we talk about those undeniable signs, like I was like, I was kind of fighting with the idea of can I be a coach? I don't know. There was the self-doubt, all of this stuff. And when a coach who is successful and helps other people comes and asks me for coaching, it's like, okay, if she sees the value, I can definitely coach many others. Um, and it just continued down that path. I mean, I first, when I left real estate, stepped into the high ticket coaching space.
Mm.
So I was actually on the sales side, and I worked for a company that was making an incredible impact in people's lives, changing people's lives, getting them out of their 9 to 5, helping them build a very purpose-built, driven business. And immediately from my very first month, I had, completely smashed every record that the company had ever done. I came in first month and I think doubled the record that they'd ever done. And
Wow.
from
Okay.
there onwards, it just continued. It got to the point where the sales manager was coming to me and he was like, "What are you doing? Like, how are you doing this?" And this is the work I teach, right? It's not that I was just incredible at sales. It was that I understand the work of manifestation. I understand how powerful our mind is. I understand, how to change my subconscious mind and help other people to change their subconscious mind and to help them make decisions and, all of these things. So my impact's just 10x right away, and my income, skyrocketed beyond what the other reps were doing. And again, it just became more and more apparent the further I went into following my intuition to what I found brought me more fulfillment, the income raised, the impact raised, and I didn't feel like I had to try as hard. I felt like I was actually just, kind of flowing down a river. So,
Wow, that's good, man. I love that. When you said, so it sounds like by the time you got into the high ticket coaching, you had already developed this skill of manifestation to where it was just effortless at that point, and you were also in a more fulfilling role. When you were in real estate, is that when you first learned more so about the manifestation and the skill of using it to get what you want?
yeah, 100%. So, I got into real estate and I had very up and down results. So I would do pretty good and then I would pretty much almost go broke.
Gotcha.
And I got into real estate young. I was 21 years old and I was in Toronto, downtown Toronto, very big city, very, very competitive in real estate. And I was pretty much at the point where I thought I was going to have to leave real estate because I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. I almost went broke again. And I was very desperate and I went to I bought like a weekend thing for a manifestation coach that I was into, but I had never fully dove in it. It was just like I liked the idea of what she taught about. And I had made like 4 grand from like January to March. So like couple grand a month, not even a couple grand a month. And
Right.
within that weekend that I did that manifestation course, I made 4 grand, 4 or 5 grand in the weekend. And she
Oh,
told
wow.
you to pick a number. She said pick a number that would prove to you almost that this works and everything. And I made the 4 or 5 grand in a weekend. At the time, I had never made any money like that in a weekend, and I was like, no way. Like this works. And I just dove headfirst in, and from March to the end of the year, I ended up making over 150,000 as a 21-year-old. So at the time, that was a lot of money to me.
Right.
And again, it was that undeniable proof of like, okay, this works. Like I went from completely broke to making the most money I ever had in the shortest time period, and just by following these principles. So then the question is like, how far can I take this?
Yeah. How far can this scale?
Yeah.
Wow. And when you there's early successes using the system, using the manifestation, did you start to get an inclination of like, hey, this is maybe something I can help other people learn as well? Or was that kind of later on in the journey?
Yeah, almost immediately when I started to learn it, I had this crazy burning sensation to help other people with it. But I did understand and know that I needed to be an absolute expert and master first.
Mm,
So it was something that I would have loved to do, but it was like kind of a 1 day thing.
yeah.
And the more I just focused on myself and doing the work for myself, and again, my results increased and increased and increased. I went from making couple grand a month to, doing 150 grand in a year to then moving on to working way less and making like over 30 grand a month from using this work. And I got to this point where, like I said, people were coming to me and asking me to coach them. People were coming to me and saying, like, how are you doing this? How are these results coming to you? I looked back, it had been 5 years or so, and I looked back and every single aspect of my life had changed. I had manifested so much of my dream life and felt so happy and had that freedom. And I got to this point where I was like, wow, I am a master of this and I need to teach people this. Like, people cannot live their life without knowing this.
Wow. That's good stuff, man. That's really good stuff. And when you, I guess, as this whole transition period was happening, and you were just becoming more of this individual who could, you master the manifestation in your own life and begin to, duplicate it in others in the period of transition. how did it play into your personal life? Well, I mean, obviously you were finding that fulfillment, but like outside of business, how did things start to transform in that aspect?
Yeah, part of this work is our minds are so in disorder. And it's not surprising because the way that today works, there's so many distractions, misinformation, it's hard. So a lot of this work actually creates order in your mind. And when you have order in your mind, and also when you know how the world works and how us as spiritual beings having a human experience, how that works, it gives you the faith that you can call what you want into your life.
Mm.
And when you have order in your mind and you have faith and an understanding of how this world works and can call what you want into your life, it just becomes, you personally as a human just become so clear in what you want. So, things flow so easily. You can kind of relax. You don't need to be so stressed. And when you do relax and, go into the state of faith and everything, that brings up other, you raise your vibration and you go into these states of love and authenticity and these higher vibrational states that really just impact every part of your life, and you feel so aligned and fulfilled, and it's so beyond even any of the money or anything. Just having that wholeness to you is such a beautiful feeling.
I love that. And as far as having those lower frequency kind of emotions and states of being, like desire and want, how do those play into most people's life? Like, would you say, like, is that like we feel like we need all these different things, like you're saying, but is it the actual wanting and the desire that holds us back at times?
No, so desire is great. I think that we'll always desire another level of life. We are, as humans, goal-seeking organisms, and we live in a universe that's actually ever expanding. So we need to desire something. We need to have goals that require us to grow. And that whole process is great. The lower state vibrations are ones of guilt or shame, or fear, and those are no place to live. A lot of
Right.
people live in fear. They're constantly worried about, if they're gonna hit their number or if something bad is gonna happen. There's so much anxiety in today's world.
Yes.
And it's, because there's not enough faith. People don't know how things work. They don't have faith in, any specific way of being, or, the way that the world works or anything like that. They don't have faith that they'll hit their goals or that they'll live this life that they want. So it's that kind of transition from the fear-based, lower vibrational frequency states of being to those higher states of being that will immediately just see such a big change in, again, not just your results, but even just who you are as a person and how happy you are day to day, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense, man. It makes a lot of sense. And faith keeps coming up. As far as, there's a big difference, in my opinion, or can be at least, between religion and spirituality, right? I believe we're all obviously very spiritual, but there's a reluctance to accepting that nowadays in our culture, in our society. Can you speak to that a little bit? Why do you have any idea why that is?
Yeah, so religion has very specific rules. There's very rigid lines within religion. Um, but it has a spiritual background, if that makes sense. Like it's built
Right.
on spiritual principles. Whereas spirituality, it can be much more open and, open to the person and how they want to define it. You know, just something as simple as believing in a higher power, whether that's God, universe, how energy works, can be someone saying, someone can say they're spiritual if they have any beliefs around that. So I
Mm.
think that spirituality over religion, just allows you to be a little more open in your beliefs with it, whereas, certain religions, again, have very specific rules that also go against a lot of what's going on in today's world,
Right.
um, which I think is where there's a bit of a disconnect or difference, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with everything you just said there. As far as faith goes, do you think it's the lack of faith? in different possibilities. They really hold most of us back in this life.
100%. That was a great question. You said that great. Um, People don't have faith in that, in themselves, in the fact that they can change their life or their reality. They don't have faith in a higher power or understanding that there's a lot more to this life and who we are than just our past. And that's what people get stuck in actually is, they constantly focus on their past and their current results as well. And they're basically just manifesting that same past and those current results because that's what they focus on.
Mm.
So having to pull your attention away from that and then kind of create a new energy around what you do want and where you can go and understand that, there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. We are not fixed human beings. We can grow, we can change every part of ourselves. And if you believe that and start to change yourself, that's when, people can begin to move into faith of a better life and, a new way of being even as ourselves.
Yes, yes, bro, yes. And when people do begin to shift that entire frame of belief, what starts to happen?
Magic starts to happen, to put it simply. But it's the way the world works, actually, is funny enough. It's very normal. People just have a hard time believing it. But
Yeah.
when you switch into that faith and you start to focus on creating that new reality versus re-manifesting your past or your current reality, things can quickly start to fall into place if you do this work right, because there are a lot of moving parts to this. But if you do this work right, you can very quickly manifest a new life for yourself. And as soon as you have that first proof that this is how it works, like I said, and it kind of becomes undeniable, you could take this as far as you want to go. I mean, some of the most successful people in the world all use these exact principles.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and as far as the different moving pieces go, if someone's looking to get started with something like this, like to move on their own process, what do you think the first moving pieces of the puzzle would be to figure out?
Yeah, I think the first piece of the puzzle is to really start to do the inner work and understand what you truly want. Like, most people are directionless, or they're going after things that their parents want or society wants for them. They've kind of formed this idea based on, the physical world out there and other people's definition of success. So I think a lot of times we need to go inward and understand what we truly want and what our definition of success is, because the highest vibrational state of being is actually authenticity. So if we're not operating with an authenticity, things aren't going to flow to you as you really hope to, right? And I take people through this whole process where, we get clear on what we want, we expand our awareness and raise our consciousness, and then we start to reprogram our subconscious mind because that's where our programming, our paradigm, everything is. And through this process is where we find faith, but there is a very, rigid or strict process of rewiring our mind, of, having repetition of thought, of debunking old beliefs. And essentially you're becoming a new person. Like that's what manifestation is really manifesting a new version of you that will then be a vibrational match and attract that life that you truly got clear on or want.
Mm. That's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. That's really good stuff. As far as energetically being that individual who can attract that different life, it can be quick, it can be slower. What do you think are some of the major players in that like quickness of the process?
Yeah, dedication to the work. Some people um, think that they know about manifestation, but they're just dancing around on the surface. Like, you need to be in the work all day, every day. And being in the work doesn't always have to mean studying, but, as simple as getting yourself in that energy, visualizing, who that person is that has those things. And then when you get clear on who that person is that has those things, you have to show up as that person. You have to make decisions as that person. You have to
Mm.
serve as that person. You have to speak as that person, walk as that person, talk as that person. And that's what I meant about manifesting a new version of yourself. Like you have to become a new person because that person is the one that's a vibrational match to the life that you want ultimately.
Yeah, yeah. I enjoy that. I enjoy that. And let's say someone's working, typical 9 to 5, working, kind of basic kind of job, kind of, stuff. Maybe they enjoy it to some degree, but it's not fulfilling to them. What's one way you can begin to shift into that without leaving the job altogether, right? Say someone has a family, they have obligations. What are some ways they can again begin to shift into more of that different identity?
Yeah, I mean, even within your job, there's so much room for growth as a human, and it's all about how you show up first, right? So even when you're in a commitment that might not be aligned with your future, but you're still in it now, you got to show up and you got to be 100% because even that, higher self, everything that that higher self does, they show up 100%. So there was actually someone who was in this work with me, and she worked a factory job, and she was like, "How can I improve my life if I, work at a factory?" And basically, through doing this work, everything will change. So I always say, focus on yourself, focus on the inner work, the rest of it will unfold.
Mm.
So she, created a clear mental picture of, exactly the lifestyle she wanted, the income she wanted, but she just didn't focus on how she was going to get it. And what ended up happening was she ended up showing up at work in a very different manner.
Mm.
And, she ended up seeing that there were a lot of, she expanded her awareness and she, started to live on higher vibrational frequencies. And through that, she realized that there were some major flaws with how the factory she worked at was operating. So what she ended up doing was she actually ended up creating a proposal to make the factory more efficient. So
Mm.
then the company actually ended up hiring her as a consultant to fix and make that factory more efficient. So she left her job technically, but she still worked with the same factory. She started making a lot more money to actually make this factory more efficient. And as soon as that job was done, she ended up going and doing it for other factories. And out of that, created a business where she was a consultant helping the efficiency of factories, which is
Wow.
funny. So you never know exactly how these things will come to be, but if you focus on yourself, focus on showing up in that new way, create a clear mental picture of the kind of life you want, it will all unfold slowly, if that makes sense.
That makes 100% sense. And like you
Yeah.
said, it's just having that faith, creating the reality that you would more like to live in, and then just fulfilling it. And it's so interesting to hear that story because, like you said, here she is, not exactly happy with her job, but wanting to make a difference, wanting to show up different, and she puts the work in, and then next thing she knows, it all changes, and
Exactly.
she found that fulfillment that she was looking for.
Yeah.
That's powerful, man. That's really powerful. I guess where does I mean, it's all about self help, right? But where does self improvement fall into the balance of everything with the process that you take people through?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it really altogether is self-improvement because we have to go within to understand what our programming is. Like, what is it that we learned while we were growing up that isn't serving us, or, maybe some traumas in the past that are holding us back or keeping us in those lower vibrational states. So doing that work and uncovering that is one of the first steps. That's why I said expanding our awareness, because as we expand our awareness and make the unconscious conscious, then we have to work on, getting past those traumas and changing our beliefs that we learned from the past and, really taking those steps to creating new beliefs and rewiring our mind. So that's why it all is really self-improvement because it's inner work that we have to do to change our exterior reality. We will never change our exterior reality without changing our inner self first. So that's where it all really comes from, and that's the root of all of this.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess where do you, how do you personally find the balance in between like self improvement and self acceptance? Because that's a big thing I know I've went through. where like it's all about self improvement, improve, improve, improve. But there's certain things that you have to at least accept first before you can improve on them, or maybe just accept them altogether. How do you find the balance within that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think that what people don't realize is that there are two parts to us. There is, us as spiritual beings living a human experience, and then there's our paradigm, which is our programming, which was learned over time. So the paradigm is what needs improvement, and we need to break that down and build a new paradigm and all of that. As spiritual beings living a human experience, that is really what we truly need to learn to accept and understand and get to know. But that's the
Mm,
part that most people don't. Most people hold on to their paradigm in their past and their programming, thinking it's them, when truly it's not them at all. Um, so there's a great book. Michael Singer wrote it. It's The Untethered Soul.
mm,
He explains this concept of the self, and he says the self is not this human body. There's actually something behind that is conscious and kind of experiencing this human life. And that is more of the self that we need to recognize and acknowledge and get into. And that's what's really controlling a lot of this if we allow it to, because as of right now, we let our programming control everything. And that's the part that we need to, really change so that we can see change in our life.
yes, yes. And that actually flows into my next question. I wrote that book down. I'm going to have to check that out. But as far as the tether to this physical world, like we become so tethered to what we know and what we're in reality, our, well, like you said, our paradigm, our subconscious programming of how we understand and see the world. As as we develop and as we uncover our subconscious tethers, how do you think that plays into our visions for the future? Like, can we see a vision for the future if we have nothing but tethers to the physical world?
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people have the hardest time with. And that's one of the big switches you need to make early on, is that we need to learn to really know that by focusing on the future or by focusing on this different life that we want, we are creating different thoughts and a different energy. And that's what raises our vibrational frequency to then allow us to live that life that we want.
Right.
So a lot of the tethers that we have to the physical world is, our past thoughts from our past experiences, or our thoughts that we're looking at our current experiences. And that's the big shift, is shifting away from our past thoughts or focusing on our past experiences or current results and current experiences, into focusing into the unknown and having faith that there is this unknown, that we, can create a new reality and new results and a life that we truly want. And I mean, I could go deeper into the other side of it, of the quantum physics, which is what I've learned a lot from, Dr. Joe Dispenza is, amazing with this. But there's actually a quantum field around us. And that's where a lot of this unknown is. There's this energy that we have access to, but we don't step in and, really focus on that, or, have access to it, because we just focus on ourselves and our current results. But if you can create a new reality in this quantum field, that's what will have it manifest in our life, which is very interesting.
It's very interesting. Like I said, it's creating that alternate reality almost, like a different dimension.
Exactly. It is actually literally creating a different reality in a different dimension.
What's up, guys? I hope you really enjoyed the content here today with Adam. I know I had fun making it. If you learned anything, feel free to like, comment, share it with somebody. I'm going to link him below on his Instagram, where you can find him and get in contact if you so desire. And yeah, guys, let's just continue to do what we do, make the world a better place.